Metro Exodus has been a long time in gestation at developer 4A Games, but it's well worth the wait. The 4A engine is back with an improved physically based lighting model and even adds ray tracing on PC, meaning the series continues to challenge any hardware it appears on. Indeed, historically the team loves to push the envelope of what's possible, sometimes to breaking point. Look back to Metro Redux and we saw the first two games reworked on PS4 and Xbox One with updated materials and lighting. It ran at 60 frames per second, but still, the physics and heavy effects work stressed even PC around release, and 60 was certainly an upgrade over the 20 to 30 FPS range on last gen consoles. Redux refined two games that, around 2013, were a serious benchmark for PC and console users alike. For Exodus, the third in the trilogy, 4A goes back to a 30 frames per second target on console, but with good cause. The idea is to deliver something equally ambitious in the moment, this time focusing on open environments away from its signature metro stations. The labyrinthine tunnels do return of course, and they're a great way to showcase AI systems, volumetric lighting, and even destruction physics in a contained space. In fact, lighting is especially brilliant in Exodus. Check this out, an early set piece with the train shows real-time rendering of light as it passes through smoke, a beautifully blended fusion of light, effects and volumetrics. Now to get this running on console, it depends on buffers rendered at different resolutions on PS4 and Xbox One machines, something I'll touch on later, and with a knock to frame rate too. But even with certain cutbacks, it's still very impressive on console. With that in mind, Metro on PC is the preference to get the full visual package. As we'll cover later in this analysis, PS4 and Xbox One frame rate drops are an issue you'll have to accept at certain points, as a trade-off for seeing some cutting edge techniques. If you're armed with a decent RTX graphics card, of course the situation changes. Exodus is a rare beast in that it gives you huge scope on PC to improve on the console experience, an area my colleague Alex will focus on in his own PC breakdown. But on console of course, there are 4 unique ways to play, and 4 specific bands of GPU spec between them that fare quite differently. So which comes out on top? The answer might surprise you. The best place to start is, as always, with the image. We've got a crystal clear view of a winter landscape on each that makes it obvious which console's which. The most exemplary of the 4 is Xbox One X, which pushes a native 3840 by 2160. It's remarkably clean, and while there are buffers and techniques in place that run at different resolutions within a scene, notably the fog, the final output does appear to be 4K. Next down the line is Sony's enhanced PS4 Pro, which takes a hit to 2560 by 1440. Now 1440p is about within expectation for the Pro, though really put side by side, there's no contest which comes out better. As for the base consoles, PS4 runs at a native 1920 by 1080, and so far, I haven't noticed any real deviations from that number. Indeed, if the system is under any stress, it relies on an adaptive VSync, which you can see by the tearing, to compensate. There is a chance all systems could use dynamic res, but certainly the final output on PS4 is 1080p most of the time. Now that's not the case on base Xbox One, though really it does acquit itself rather well. A dynamic 1080p setup is used there, and it runs below that more obviously. Look to the sky and yes, you get 1080p, but during the train sequence for example, it hits 1536 by 864. That's just under 900p based on my testing, so there is a range, but it generally rests in between the two. Okay, now before we go deeper here, you may notice a difference in gamma levels. It appears as of making this video, there's a system level issue on Xbox One systems with gamma. That's both base and X models, when paired with certain HD TVs and capture devices. It sticks out in Metro Exodus especially though, due to those dark underground areas being so prominent. As a result, the Xbox One X picture here can show black detail being crushed compared to PS4 Pro. Again, it's an issue that appears on all Xbox One consoles we've tried, but not on PS4 systems, and using Metro's in-game gamma setting doesn't really solve it. Bump it to max and the dark scenes look correct, but outdoors the brightness is oversaturated. There's no way to balance both. Now, it's a frustration and we've asked Microsoft directly if there's any insight into why it's happening. Hopefully something that will be fixed, as it affects other games like Crackdown 3 as well. But still, for now, we can take a look at the visual and performance differences as they appear today. What divides the 4 consoles then? Well, it's amazing to see, but everything from textures to motion blur sampling quality to even the use of muzzle flash shadows is included on all 4 machines. Base Xbox One loses some detail on texture filtering, as is par for course in most games, but the fundamental asset quality is identical across the board. Screen space effects look beautiful from X to the base model, with that frost across the glass, lens flares and snow. Another real highlight is the incredible level of detail on clothing, regardless of machine. Fabric for tightly knit jumpers show errant threads, patchwork and clumps of moss woven in between the seams. It looks so good even up close, and 4A Games retains that even for base Xbox One. That fabric shows minor cloth physics too, on jumpers and ripped flags across the wasteland, but we are missing the advanced physics simulation of PC. In terms of well detailed differences, once you're up and out of those metro stations, is the subject of object detail. Base PS4 and Xbox One use reined-in LOD parameters, meaning small objects fade in more visibly as you walk forward. The setting for that is lowest on Xbox One, while the enhanced machines get a bump overall. Equally, we see actual geometry is upgraded on Pro and X, compared to the base machines, with better defined rocks and small objects strewn across the floor. A minor detail, but one that stands out with the bigger, clearer picture those machines can push out. Next, there's the not so small matter of that fog effect. Volumetric fog appears to run at differing quality settings on console, and so freezing a frame as bullet shells fly from a gun in front of it, you can use the outlines to get a sense of the resolution it runs at. Even without pixel counts, there's a clear difference between the base and enhanced consoles. For perspective, base Xbox One appears to use a 33% scale resolution per axis of the screen's max 1920 by 1080 image. Whether it's depth of field, alpha or the fog, that effectively means a low res buffer. It's a rare, extreme position to be in, and given the fog is inherently undefined, it kind of works.
Pull this together.
Now this cutscene outside the train reveals cut down buffers on more powerful systems too, though they are generally higher. Base PS4 for example, in the same test, gets less than 50% scale per axis. At the extreme end, you have PS4 Pro and Xbox One X pushing that effect at somewhere under 1080p, and so it does appear to go up according to the max resolution each machine is targeting. It's a fascinating and discreet way to adjust load for consoles based on the GPU capabilities in each, and doing it without curbing the quality of the core asset work or shadows. Judging a game by its final output resolution is useful to know, but games like Metro Exodus remind us there's plenty more going on under the hood that affects the look of a game. There is a benefit to this on base Xbox One, the performance side. Thanks to the dynamic 1080p resolution and the cutbacks elsewhere, it's surprisingly the most resilient console when it comes to holding 30fps. Usually when we get to this frame rate section of our videos, the given order from best to worst is Xbox One X, PS4 Pro, base PS4, and then regular Xbox One. That's how Metro Exodus pans out, except base Xbox One leaps to the front of the order. The understanding is, the cutbacks to resolution, LODs and effects are overly effective, and the result is actually quite positive. Check out this comparison between base machines. Base PS4 holds 30fps a lot of the time, but clearly drops, and that adaptive screen tear kicks in when pushed, a lot more so than base Xbox One. It's not entirely perfect. From the opening hours at least, there's one fight against these mutant creatures that does pull Xbox One down. But by comparison, you simply don't see the screen tearing as much compared to any of the other consoles. The other litmus test is that battle near and around the train, an area that plummets base PS4 to 16fps. That holds for as long as you're surrounded by the fog effect, but Xbox One breezes through it at 30fps. It's fair to say most areas run at 30fps on all machines, but when tested in firefights like this, the regular PS4 is absolutely the worst performing of the bunch. If we move to the enhanced consoles next, Pro and X, it's a less clear-cut victory for Microsoft's machine. On balance, each holds 30fps, but when challenged, it's the Pro that slips into the 20s with tearing, and X holds its own pretty well. Only one section shows a comparatively worse result on X, around the train, but that's likely down to the difference in position. It proves each console can and will drop to 20fps around that spot. It's also a sign that 4K rendering on X is still quite a stretch for the console. The outlook is that frame rate drops are the sacrifice rather than dynamically shifting the resolution as with base Xbox One. It's the second best performer, but surprisingly only after its much weaker sibling. In the main, we're looking at a superbly crafted game on all formats. I love that just about everything is delivered in-engine, from the motion cap cutscenes to even the main menu's dials and knobs. 4A Games really pushes hard on this concept, the idea of crafting a beautifully lit world and bringing these characters to life. It's got a unique visual identity and a commendable ambition when it comes to its tech. The frame rate is the trade-off though, clearly, and potentially the Pro and X could adopt some of the benefits of base Xbox One. Leaning more heavily on dynamic res or pruning back effects could give these machines that wiggle room to hit 30 FPS when the effects really start to fly. So, which is the best console version to play? If you do have that luxury of choice, it's a tough call. There's no perfectly balanced version on console. Between the visually pruned back base Xbox One and its superior performance, or the more taxing effects and resolution on Pro and X with their lower FPS. On balance, I'd vouch for Xbox One X as the version I'd personally play. Supposing the gamma issue is fixed, what you get is the second best performance on console and at a full 4K to boot. Added to that, there's Atmos support included for spatial audio too on both Xbox machines. Whatever version you choose though, I'd definitely recommend giving this one a look. Metro Exodus is unlike any shooter I've played in a long time. A rare beast in this day of multiplayer focused shooters, it's heavily narrative driven and tech focused in a way that reminds me most of Crysis or even Half-Life, though with its own twist. As with Valve and Crytek's classics though, 4A Games' efforts here hit a new plateau on PC. The console versions are solid 30fps renditions, but it's just the case that the PC edition taps into the engine's most exciting visual features, including ray tracing. Now that goes for most games in a face-off, but especially in Metro Exodus' case, it's worth experiencing if you do have the right setup. But that's all I have time for today. If you did enjoy this analysis, do feel free to like or subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to hit the bell for any notifications as any new video lands. For the full 4K source file to this analysis, check out our Patreon at digitalfoundry.net. Any questions, direct them to me or the team on Twitter. But until next time, thanks for watching.